Hello everyone and welcome to the Victory Forge. In this episode I'm going to make another Pokeball Terrarium, this time with some Bulbasaurs, an Ivysaur, and a Venusaur. I made the Pokemon using my FlashForge Inventor 3D printer, Hatchbox Blue PLA, and some files I found on Thingiverse that I will link in the comments below. With a final print time of about 4 hours and 10 minutes for the 5 Pokemon, I was really happy with how these models turned out. They're very detailed and the supports weren't too terrible to remove, even though I had to be really careful when taking out the supports from in between the Venusaur's plants and then from the vines of the Ivysaur and the Bulbasaur. After removing all of the supports and smoothing out the models, I then gave them a white coat of primer, followed by a desert turquoise for the primary color, shamrock green for the vines and leaves, pink punch for the flowers, with yellow, white, black, and Tuscan teal for the accents, followed with a bark brown and a light tan for the tree limb. In between coats of paint, I started playing around with ideas for the terrain, eventually going with the suggestion of a river running through the middle, with all of the bulbs playing in and around the water. After carving the shape in the foam, I then coated it with some colored Mod Podge to give it some strength, an undercoat of color, and to hopefully make it a little more waterproof for my upcoming resin pour. After all of that was dry, I coated the green with another layer of Mod Podge and cracked out the old static grass applicator, easily one of my favorite parts of any project. By introducing a static charge to the glue, it forces this grass to stand on end, giving it a very satisfying and realistic look. My next step was to finish the detail work on the models by painting and outlining the eyes, adding some gradients to the leaves, flowers, and bark, and adding a few spots on the Bulbasaur, Venusaur, and Ivysaur's legs, and finally by coating the eyes with a little bit of UV resin to give them a shiny, lifelike surface. Finishing the models with a clear coat to save my progress, I next turned my attention to the riverbed. I initially had thought of using some rocks and sand, but decided to paint it instead because I didn't want to make the bottom too thick and because my resin is going to obscure most of the bottom anyway. With the riverbed dried, I used a little bit of hot glue to fix my mons into their final location, as well as go around the edges of the riverbed to make sure my resin was going to stay where I wanted it to. After mixing up my 2-part resin, I added a few drops of blue dye and carefully poured the resin into the riverbed, guiding it using a stir stick and around the legs and tree trunk that are supposed to be sticking out of the river. After the resin was poured, I swirled in a little bit of neon blue paint into the river to give it an ethereal glow and add to the story about why the bulb in the water is so much bigger than the rest of its friends. After the resin river had set, I added an assortment of flowers and plants to fill in the jungle around the mons, as well as to add a bigger variety of color to the diorama. With the interior of the terrarium complete, the last step is to finish the outside of the Pokeball. After gluing the top into place, I used some blue painter's tape to mark off the central ring, painted it black, and then once that was dry, I coated the black with some UV resin to make it shiny. After all of that had dried, I glued on the button and called it good. With that, we're done here and on to the glamour shots. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you liked that, please feel free to leave a like, a comment, or check out some of my other videos. You could even smash that subscribe button so you'll be notified of my future videos. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time here on The Victory Forge.